Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. In Wordsworth's preface to lyrical ballads, this topic, his theory of poetry, is perhaps the most important topic. And this topic, Wordsworth's theory of poetry, includes five different things. First of all, we need to discuss what is a poet according to Wordsworth. This will be included in his theory of poetry. Secondly, what is poetry? Third, what is poetic truth and its meaning? Fourth, what is the end and function of poetry? And fifth and finally, what is the most suitable language of poetry? Out of these five, we are going to discuss this topic. What is a poet? What is the meaning of a poet? What is meant by a poet? So this is the topic for this lecture. What is a poet according to Wordsworth? And this is one of the five topics included in his theory of poetry. So if you have his theory of poetry as a question in a question paper, then of course you need to write all of them very briefly. And if they are giving you separate questions, for example, what is a poet according to Wordsworth, then you will need to write this one, the lecture I'm delivering now. So, what is a poet? We will discuss five characteristics of the poet. The first characteristic is that the poet is a man speaking to men. These are the different phrases used by Wordsworth. For example, the poet is a man among men, or the poet is a man speaking to men. Both these phrases mean that poet is a common personality, an ordinary personality. This idea is contrasted with the neoclassical idea, who said that a poet is a grand personality who writes for grand people in grand language. So, this idea of a man speaking to men or man among men is contrasted with the neoclassical idea. Wordsworth also tells us that a poet has different faculties, uh, just like the faculties of the other men. By faculties, he means different senses. For example, the sense of observation, the sense of pity, sense of love, sense of patience. All these senses are there in common man, and these are there in the poets too. So, as far as the um, faculties are concerned, the senses are concerned, they are there in the poets and they are also there in the common man. What is then the difference? The difference lies in the degree and quality of these faculties. The degree and quality of these faculties is greater in intensity in poets and not that much greater in an ordinary man. So you see, he is first calling that man an ordinary man, but then differentiating him from the ordinary man by saying that though these faculties are common in common man and a poet, but then differentiating them by saying that the intensity of these faculties is greater in the poets as compared to the common man. As far as the presence is concerned, it is the same in the poet and in the common man. ये पहली कैरेक्टरिस्टिक है. हम वर्ड्सवर्थ की theory of poetry as described in the preface to lyrical ballads, जिसमें 5 चीज़ें हम डिस्कस करेंगे. उसकी theory में पहली चीज़ theory of poetry में वो है what is a poet, और हम इसको डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. what is a poet के हवाले से हमने पहली कैरेक्टरिस्टिक पढ़ी कि ये एक बंदा है जो दूसरे बंदों के साथ बात करता है, जिसका मतलब ये है कि ये कुछ स्पेशल बंदा नहीं है, ये एक आम ही बंदा है और आम लोगों में पाया जाता है। इसकी कैरेक्टरिस्टिक, फैकल्टीज, क्वालिटीज, सेंसेस ये वही हैं जो आम बंदे में हैं। मसलन मुशाहिदे की हिस्स भी वही है। अगर पिटी का सेंस है तो वो औरों में भी पाया जाता है, इसमें भी है, लव और पैशंस। तो यहाँ तक तो कोई फ़र्क नहीं है ऑर्डिनरी मैन में और पोएट में, दोनों में ये चीज़ें पाई जाती हैं। फ़र्क जो पाया जाता है वो डिग्री और क्वालिटी में है। इन सेंसेस की क्वालिटीज़ और डिग्री ये पोएट में ज़्यादा है, इंटेंसिटी, शिद्दत इनकी पोएट में ज़्यादा है और आम बंदे में कम है। So this is the first characteristic of a poet, man speaking to man. The second is that of imagination, the ability to imagine things, whether real or unreal. This ability of bringing to the mind the present things or the absent things is what is referred to as imagination. He has already told you in the first characteristic that a poet is a man speaking to man. But the characteristics which he has of the common man are more intense. One of such a characteristic is also that of imagination. The imagination is also present in ordinary people and it is present in a poet as well. But the power of imagination is stronger in the poet as compared to the ordinary man. The power of imagination is finer and it is stronger. This imagination is important because it removes the veil of prejudices and the veil of all the bad things on the face of earth. And when this veil is removed, we see things in a different way. We see and feel the presence of God in simple things like a flower, as Wordsworth has already said so, that he is able to see God in a flower. And when this veil is removed with the help of imagination, we find miracles taking place all around us because we, due to this veil, cannot see the reality of things. And when this veil is removed, the reality of things is revealed to us and we go closer to the reality. So, therefore, imagination, which is an important thing, is greater in strength and it is finer as compared to the imagination of an ordinary man. And the function of imagination is to remove that veil of prejudice, that veil of corruption, that veil of lie from the face of earth, from the face of people, and to see the reality of things. So this imagination is stronger in him. This is the second characteristics. दूसरी क्वालिटी पोइट की अकॉर्डिंग टू वर्ड्सवर्थ वो स्ट्रांग इमेजिनेशन है। आम बंदे में भी इमेजिनेशन होता है लेकिन एक पोइट की इमेजिनेशन आम बंदे से तेज होती है, स्ट्रांग होती है, फाइनर होती है और ये इस इमेजिनेशन की वजह से है कि उसको चीज़ें ज़्यादा इंटरेस्टिंग नज़र आती हैं। इसलिए कि एक आम आदमी की इमेजिनेशन कम होने की वजह से वो किसी चीज़ की तह तक नहीं पहुंचता और उस तह में उसको स्पिरिट ऑफ गॉड नज़र नहीं आता। क्योंकि वर्ड्सवर्थ का एक आइडिया ये भी है, जिसको पैंथीज़म भी कहते हैं, कि जो स्पिरिट हम में है वो स्पिरिट नेचुरल ऑब्जेक्ट्स में भी है, मसलन पौधों में भी है, दरख्तों में भी है और सूरज में भी है, चांद में भी है। और ये जो स्पिरिट है स्पिरिट ऑफ गॉड है और ये तब नज़र आता है जब आप इमेजिनेशन के थ्रू इस वेल को जो कि लोगों के चेहरों और फेस ऑफ अर्थ पे मौजूद है। जब आप इमेजिनेशन के थ्रू इसको हटाते हैं तो आप रियलिटी के करीब जाते हैं। ये एक पोएट में स्ट्रांग होती है। सो दिस वाज द second characteristic. The third characteristic of a poet is sympathy, and Coleridge used the word empathy. Though both are similar, empathy is a little greater in sympathy. In sympathy, you feel pity for someone, but in empathy, you put yourself in the shoes of others. You become that other personality and you feel what he feels. Coleridge tells us that imagination and sympathy have got similar meaning, because when there is imagination, there is sympathy, rather empathy, because it is with the help of imagination that you can identify with the other people. You, with the help of imagination, can put yourself in the shoes of others and you can feel like them. So, this man, the poet, he has the capacity for strong emotional enthusiasm, and this is because of imagination, and this is because of this imagination he has that empathy and sympathy in greater amount. These two characteristics may be found in ordinary men, but they are more intense in the poet, and it is important uh, characteristic if you want to put yourself in the place of someone else. So he has sympathy or empathy. तीसरी क्वालिटी किसी पोइट की वर्ड्सवर्थ की प्रेफेस ऑफ लिरिकल टू लिरिकल बैलेट्स के मुताबिक वो ये है कि पोइट जो है इसमें हमदर्दी ज़्यादा होती है, बल्कि एम्पैथी होती है, जिसका मतलब है दूसरे की जगह पर अपने आप को रखना। कॉलेज ने ये भी कहा था कि जो इमेजिनेशन है और सिंपैथी है, दोनों वर्ड सिमिलर मीनिंग रखते हैं, क्योंकि अगर आप इमेजिनेशन तेज़ रखते हैं तो ऑटोमेटिक आप सिंपैथी रखेंगे, क्योंकि आप इमेजिनेशन के थ्रू किसी और की जगह पर अपने आप को डाल सकते हैं, और इसी वजह से आप एज ए पोइट कैपेसिटी रखते हैं इमोशनल इंथुजियाज्म की, जोश व खरोश की, इस इमेजिनेशन की वजह से. So this was the third characteristic. The fourth characteristic of a poet is that he is a man pleased with his own passions and volitions, and he has the ability, the poet, he has the ability to create events arousing feelings which resemble real feelings. The idea is a little difficult. I'll try to explain it in Urdu also, but listen to it in English first. Um, Passions, as you know, refer to emotions. Volitions means your willpower, quwwat iradi as it is called in Urdu. This poet is pleased or is made happy by his own passions and by his own volition. This is something which needs explanation. It's a little difficult idea, and let me explain this. It means that this poet has the ability to live within himself. Oh, how can this be possible? To live within yourself. Or he takes delight in contemplating, thinking about similar passions and volitions which are going on in the universe. This idea, as I explained a little earlier, is about pantheism. Pantheism means that we have the spirit. We have a specific spirit, maybe the spirit of God, according to Wordsworth. This spirit is also there in natural objects, for example, in trees, plants, in sun, moon, sky, they have the same spirit which we have. So in this way, we are interconnected. We are connected with the natural objects because of that spirit which goes through us and which goes through all the universe or universal objects. So therefore we are interconnected. We have a relationship with the other objects. We are not alone. Even when we are alone, we are actually not alone because our spirit has that connection with the other things, because the other things also have got the same spirit. Um, the poet also has the ability to create feelings in people, and this he can do by writing about some incidents. When the poet writes about an incident which actually has taken place or not taken, he might create that incident, and then he describes it in his poem, and it is then read by the reader. The same type of feelings which the poet had felt while writing those incidents, or while having looked at those incidents, and feelings were aroused in the poet, the same feelings are aroused in the reader as well. So you see, a specific purpose is performed. That feeling is transferred from the poet with the help of his poetry to the reader. And as I said, when that spirit which passes through all the objects and through us, we do not feel alone even when we are alone. And therefore, he is able to say that a poet is a man pleased with his own passions and volitions. His own passions and volitions have connection with the passions and volitions of the other things because of that spirit which passes through the universe. The idea is, and this idea about the psyche, about the soul, has been described by Plato, and I have delivered a separate lecture on it, that our spirit, our soul, has three layers. There is the outer layer of the body, there is the inner layer, mind, and in between them, according to Plato, is the spirit. But according to Wordsworth, deeper in the mind is the soul of God. It is the same soul which passes through us and which passes through the objects of nature. So the outer layer is the body, it is not that important. But the inner layer is important, it is the mind. It refers to our volitions, will, power, our passions, emotions, our thoughts, and all these are the activities of mind. So this next thing, which is very important and which is the deepest of these two, is the soul of God. We have that soul of God, also called the Spirit of God, in us, and the Spirit of God is present in all things. And we are interconnected, and that's why we can live within ourselves. We are not alone. Even when we are alone, we are not alone. We are pleased with ourselves, with our own passions, with our own spirit. He, the poet, can think about the workings of passions and emotions, and he finds the same thing in himself, what he finds in the things of the universe, which, as I said, we are interconnected in this regard. So the laws of human nature are the same as the laws of the outer nature. The inside of the human being is the same spirit which is outside in the nature. So the same spirit is present in us and it is present in nature as well. And it is in Tintin Abbey that Wordsworth says about this fact, and I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts. He says that he has felt the presence of something, and this is the presence of God, the presence of that spirit. He says, it disturbed me with the joy of elevated thoughts. The joy is so much great that he is rather disturbed by that joy. It is that extreme enthusiasm that he is feeling by using the word disturb. A sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused. There is something which is very deep and which is mixed and with us and within the natural objects whose dwelling and this natural spirit lives is the whose dwelling is the light of setting suns. The sun when sets in this light you find the living place of this spirit, the spirit of God, and the round ocean, and you find the spirit in the ocean and in the living air, and even the liver. In the living air, he calls the air living, and the blue sky, and in the mind of man. So it is there in the sky, it is there in the mind of man. The same thing, the same spirit is in the man, the same spirit is in the nature. It was a quite detailed discussion, but you should write it in your own simple words. मैं इसको उर्दू में रिपीट कर देता हूँ ताकि आपको आसानी हो। थोड़ा सा ये डिफ़िकल्ट है। पोएट के बारे में वो हमें बताता है कि ये वो आदमी है जो अपने मन में खुश रहता है। अब ये पॉइंट थोड़ी सी डिटेल चाहता है। अपने मन में कैसे खुश रहता है? अपने मन में ऐसे खुश रहता है कि इसके ख्याल में हम में स्पिरिट है और यही स्पिरिट दुनिया की चीज़ों में है, आसमान में है, सूरज में है, चाँद में है, दरख्तों में है, फूलों में है, तो हम इनके साथ कनेक्टेड हैं और ये कनेक्शन हमें तन्हा नहीं छोड़ता। अगर हम तन्हा भी हैं तो हमारी इस कनेक्शन ऑफ द स्पिरिट की वजह से हम तन्हा नहीं होते और पोएट जो है अपने मन में डूबकर ये खुशी पाता है और ये खुश होता है इस कनेक्शन की वजह से। तो इसकी ये एक एबिलिटी है कि वो अपने अंदर रहे और अपने अंदर रहकर वो यूनिवर्स के साथ कंटेम्पलेट भी करता है, कम्युनिकेट भी करता है इस स्पिरिट के थ्रू। नेक्स्ट में ये डिटेल आप छोड़ भी सकते हैं अगर आपको मुश्किल लगता है, क्योंकि ये हम प्लेटो में भी पढ़ चुके हैं कि हमारे सोल के 3 पार्ट्स हैं। एक आउटर पार्ट है जो बॉडी है, इनर पार्ट है, माइंड है, और ये सोल ऑफ गॉड तो प्लेटो ने नहीं कहा था, ये वर्ड्सवर्थ कहता है, लेकिन ये 3 है। बॉडी आउटर है, माइंड ये आपकी विल पावर, वोल्यूशन और जज्बात और सोचों की एक्टिविटीज़ करता है, और इससे भी डीप आप जाएं तो सोल ऑफ गॉड है जो सारी चीज़ों में पाया जाता है और आप में भी मौजूद हैं, और जब आप देखते हैं कि आप में भी है और चीज़ों में भी है तो आप कनेक्शन नोट करते हैं और आप अपने अंदर रहना सीखते हैं और खुश होते हैं। नेक्स्ट ये भी है कि आप अगर कोई इमोशन, जज्बा किसी में पैदा करना चाहते हैं तो या तो कोई रियल इंसिडेंट बयान करते हैं तो रीडर में भी पैदा हो जाता है, या कोई अनरियल इंसिडेंट क्रिएट करते हैं इंसिडेंट और वो बयान करते हैं तो वो इंसिडेंट का इमोशन और फीलिंग वो रीडर में भी पैदा हो जाता है। ये जो लाइनें हैं ये टिनटिन एबी नज़म है, वहाँ से ली गई हैं वर्ड्सवर्थ की, और वर्ड्सवर्थ कहता है कि मैंने एक प्रेजेंस, किसी चीज़ की मौजूदगी पाई है इन चीज़ों में, और मुझे लगता है कि ये जो चीज़ है इंटरफ्यूज्ड है, मिक्स्ड है ये स्पिरिट, और इसकी जगह ये स्पिरिट रहती कहाँ है? सन की रोशनी में रहती है, ओशन में रहती है, एयर में रहती है, ब्लू स्काई में रहती है और माइंड ऑफ मैन में भी रहती है। लिहाजा हम ये इंटर कनेक्टेड है। तो ये फोर्थ कैरेक्टरिस्टिक करती पोएट। Fifth characteristic and the last one is the clarity of expression. Poet is such a man that he has this ability of clarity. He thinks clearly, he writes clearly, and his way of expression is very clear as compared to the ordinary person because he has greater sensibility, he has greater imagination. Therefore, he is able to think clearly and he is able to present things finely and in a better way. He also has better linguistic ability. Whatever language he writes in, he has full command of that language, and as a result, by using imagination, linguistic ability, greater sensibility, he creates the ability of clarity. पांचवी क्वालिटी एक पोइट की वो है कि वो अगर किसी चीज़ का इजहार करता है तो क्लियर कर सकता है। उसकी वजह इसकी इमेजिनेशन तेज़ है, इसकी सेंसिबिलिटी ज़्यादा है और इसकी लिंग्विस्टिक एबिलिटी यानी लिसान ज़बान को समझना भी ज़्यादा है, लिहाजा ये ज़्यादा क्लैरिटी से बात कर सकता है। तो 5 कैरेक्टरिस्टिक हुई। अगर आप इसको एक नज़र दोबारा डालें तो पहली कैरेक्टरिस्टिक थी कि अ पोएट इज़ अ मैन स्पीकिंग टू मैन। दूसरी, इमेजिनेशन इसकी ज़्यादा होती है। तीसरी, सिंपैथी और एम्पैथी इसमें होती है। चौथी, ये अपने मन में डूब कर खुश रह सकता है। और पांचवी और आखिरी, ये क्लैरिटी रखता है, क्लैरिटी ऑफ एक्सप्रेशन। So that's all for now. Thank you and good luck.